This video is sponsored by ExpressVPN. Sending data over an unencrypted internet connection is like sending a postcard. Your message is wide open for the mailman or any other nosy people to see. Whenever you're connected to an unencrypted internet network on any device, you're sending countless pieces of information out into the digital world that can be intercepted by many different parties. But a VPN, or a virtual private network, creates a secure tunnel between your device and the internet. I use a VPN because it protects me from hackers who try to steal my private information and so much more. ExpressVPN puts a stop to this by rerouting 100% of your network traffic through their secure, encrypted servers. To get ExpressVPN, just click the link below, and when you use my link, you will get your first 3 months for free. Well, I'm excited to be joined by author, explorer, researcher, Hugh Newman. Hugh, thanks for joining me again on Megalithic Marvels.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me back.
Your article on Baalbek, the Temple of the Giants, or you might pronounce it Baalbek. Can you give us just a snapshot of this story, this site, and how this new block that was found that's so massive is related possibly to giants?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So Baalbek, this is one of the most important sites on the planet, in my opinion. It's in the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon. It's one of many sites in the area, actually, but this is by far the most impressive. But it's not just the site itself, it's the quarry, which is about just over half a mile or so away, slightly downhill from the site. If you go to the site itself, you see these giant blocks, 800 tons, some of them, many of them 400 to 500 tons, some 600 tonners there. These are the size of a house. These are outrageous, and these were bought from this quarry uphill over half a mile and raised 30 or 40 feet in the air, some of them. And yet, people say, oh yeah, don't worry, the Romans did it, and so on and so forth. But there's no actual pure evidence of that, unfortunately. And then if you look into the historical reality of Baalbek, it was built upon this occupational mound or a tell. And this goes back to the Mesolithic. This goes so nearly the time we're talking about of Karahan Tepe and Göbekli Tepe, but in Lebanon. And there's Phoenician ruins there, and then it was built on by the Romans and other cultures. There's even medieval parts added to it, and Muslims and other such thing. There's a story of this giant skull that was found under one of the stones there, and it was housed in a mosque. Jim Vieira's got the info on that. There's no official kind of report of that. It's just mentioned in some old texts. There's the stories of the fact that it was built by giants before the flood. It's linked with the whole Adam, Noah, and that lineage. And everything else. But you go to the quarry and there's a couple of stones there which are amazing. You've got the stone of the pregnant woman. Strangely, this weighs almost exactly 1,000 tons. There's another stone just in a slightly separate quarry on the opposite side of the road. That's 1,242 tons, I believe. And then you go back to the stone of the pregnant woman, that quarry there. Underneath it, they found another stone in 2014, which weighs 1,640 or 1,650 tons. And this is just outrageous. But then, people are questioning, oh, well, that's great. They carved it out, but they haven't moved it yet. But you actually go to the site over half a mile uphill or away. You can see the gaps in the temple where these stones were going to go. Clearly, there's gaps there that they hadn't quite finished it. So something stopped them doing it. But clearly, if they can move 800-ton stones effortlessly, it seems, place them high up in walls, they might have been able to move these, but they got interrupted or something. Who knows what happened? But, we have to question what on earth is going on here and how could they do it? There's all these different theories, but to me, there's a connection with the giants makes sense. I think there's a connection with magic and telekinetic abilities as well. I think that's often overlooked, and I think a combination of these might have been how they did it.
Right, and you mentioned the Romans; they get credit for the site and building these blocks. Again, if you see the photos of this site, it's absolutely mind-blowing. 1,600-ton blocks, um, really precision cut in a sense. Yet we don't see anything like that as big in Rome anywhere, right? Down, where the center of Roman power was, we don't see blocks this big, but we find them way out here in Lebanon, and the Romans get the credit, right?
They get a lot of credit, but they could move like 200 or 300 tons. We know that. We know they could do it. We know they moved obelisks from Egypt, which are something like 240 tons, something like this. They attempted to move other stones that then broke, and they didn't complete the project. So we know they were capable of very large stones. But this is a different thing. You look at how deep it's buried in the ground, this quarry. They had to dig deep to find these stones. This isn't just from a couple of thousand years ago. This is a much older level we're talking about here. I think that is often not addressed. It's not looked at properly. We know an archaeologist out there, he's still convinced it's all Roman. The archaeologists we hang out with when we go there, and you can't change his mind for anything. You just can't do it, even though they found Mesolithic flints and things like this at the site of Baalbek itself, and Neolithic finds and everything else. But yeah, it's one of the big megalithic mysteries of the planet, Baalbek, and I think it's well worth. Once you see it with your eyes, that's when it kind of hits you. It's like, oh, okay, this is real. They actually did this. But it's like when you go to Egypt, you look at some stones of almost comparable size in Egypt. We have the unfinished obelisk still in the quarry Aswan, which is 1,168 tons. We have that never got moved, obviously, but that's made of granite, so they were carving much harder stone. We have some of the platforms on the middle pyramid, Khafre's pyramid, which were moved and placed. Some of these are hundreds of tons. We have other, elements like in the Valley Temple there as well. Some of the blocks in Peru, Sacsayhuaman, 200 tons. The Assyrian. So what's happening back then? But I think with Baalbek, it was just a different level. And I personally think Baalbek and Egypt are much more strongly connected than people realize. And if you start going back as well, you find that Göbekli Tepe and Baalbek are connected geodetically between each other, as though the sites were chosen knowing the position of the other sites across the landscape. It's something that Howard Crowhurst and I and others have been looking at as well. And so, yeah, there's a lot more to this than meets the eye. And how we can move these today is again another mystery.
Last question about this, and that is, what's the significance of the word Baalbek, and is it connected to the original foundation stones, possibly of the temple in Jerusalem?
Yeah, there's a possibility with that, because you have a stone which is 560 tons that's found supposedly at the base of what I believe was Solomon's temple in Jerusalem, near the Wailing Wall, which has got very big stones in it as well. The whole Baal name is up for debate. There's a big story about that. It's like this pagan god that goes back to the time of the Canaanites. Which has got some dark connotations. They were known to be cannibals. They would sacrifice children and other such things. And there's all these kind of modern occult traditions that still worship Baal and so forth. I don't want to get into that too much, I guess. And but so I think there's a connection between all these biblical sites I've got, and now with Göbekli Tepe is in the mix as well. But I think it's from an earlier phase. There's something profound going on there, and clearly the quarrying, the stone carving technologies reached a point at Baalbek where they sussed out how to do it supersized, and that may have only been a few generations of people who had that understanding, and then it was lost. Maybe some of it reached Egypt, eventually Peru, and so forth.
Well, Hugh, this has been a great interview. Thank you so much for your time. How can people follow you, connect with you, and get involved with your latest projects?
Yes, sure. I mean, They can go to megalithomania.co.uk. They can search for Hugh Newman and my partner JJ Ainsworth. If they want to connect up with us, they should come to our conference. We do that every May, early May in Glastonbury. We have some top speakers coming every year. We've got a whole bunch of them: Robin Heath, Irving Finkel, a whole bunch of people coming. We have some top archaeologists joining us as well. And we also do a few days of tours around the conference, and it's also online as well. We do it as we're going to send you a link for that as well, an online version so people can watch it from home, because this we kind of created it to create this bridge between academia and the alternative world, because we felt it was not being addressed. There's all this, look at what's happening with Graham Hancock and Ancient Apocalypse. There's all this kind of back and forth negative energy being thrown around. But we also, as you know, as you do as well, we run tours to many of these places like Göbekli Tepe. We go there a couple of times a year, Karahan Tepe. We do Orkney tours, Stonehenge tours, and everything else. So people can check it all out on megalithomania.co.uk. And and we're working hard on a couple of publications, which will hopefully be out. One of them will be out later this year, and another one the next year.
Awesome. And to everybody listening or watching, make sure and subscribe to the Megalithomania YouTube channel. Great videos. He's always pumping out content. So Hugh, thanks again, man, and safe journeys out there in the world.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, Dee. I appreciate it, and I look forward to catching up again soon.